Hi everyone, I'm Chad. Welcome to Maker's Bench. So I'm out here on the patio today. It's a nice hot day here in central Iowa, and thought I would work from out here today. So what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about CAD theory. It's not so much about specifically about any particular program, but there's some topics that are just CAD related, not really and design centric, not so much specifically about a certain program. So the thing I want to talk about today is origin points and origin planes. A lot of times people are just putting in their origin planes at the center of a point, or at the center of a part, or somewhere in the middle of the part. And origins really have a lot more to do with, I mean, that works. You can use the center of the part. You can use anywhere, and as long as you constrain your sketches to that point somehow, your parts will work. But when we get into designing parts and we're looking at parts, sometimes it's better to use a logical approach to where the origin planes are going to be. And I talk more about origin planes necessarily than I do with origin point. Origin point is going to obviously be the culmination of all of your three starting planes. So, where they all intersect is going to end up being 0, 0. But sometimes you want to think of it as those three planes versus just the point. Because those three planes will define the point. So when you start designing a part, sometimes it's good to go ahead and think about that. It's 3D parts for printing. Maybe if you're just printing a single part, it's not really a big deal. You can put that point anywhere, probably in the center of the part, and it'll be centered on your build plate for your printer, and that'll work out well. But if you're building, maybe you're going to build an assembly of things, and you want to build parts that are going to go together, and so you want to build an assembly of stuff, then sometimes you want to think about your origin as being as the origin planes, as how they interact with each other and how they interact in an assembly. So I put together a little thing in Fusion just to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about. So let's go to that. Okay, so here we are in Fusion. I've got a simple block right here, and what I'm going to talk about is, parts and how they interact in an assembly. So in this case, we're going to pretend like this block is our base part, and it has a hole pattern here, 5 holes, on this pattern. And we have parts designed that we've got this part, we've got an elbow part, and then we've got another elbow part with a Y part coming off of it. And it's just 2 examples of having 2 different parts that would bolt onto this block that we have built here. So what I did when I started this thing, I got the sketch started up, and basically you can see my origin point is right here. And so what I'm going to do is turn on the origin planes, and you're going to see that my origin planes are this front face, and I do have it centered on this ground plane here basically, and then this vertical plane is offset. And what I did here is I put a parameter in for this bolt hole offset. If I change it to 0, you're going to see that my part moved over, and now my origin point is in the center of the part. But for right now, we're going to keep it at this. We're going to keep it at 1. So basically, I wanted to use the center of my hole pattern as my origin point, so that when I'm bringing other parts in, they're going to lock up with that bolt pattern, and that's going to be consistent through any part I might want to bring in and swap out with that assembly. So as you can see, we have bolt pattern. Now if I want to take this second part and I want to bring it in here, what Fusion does and a lot of programs do is they bring it in and they just lock it. Well, what Fusion does is it locks it into the origin point. Inventor doesn't work that way. I haven't used SolidWorks in a long time, so I don't know how SolidWorks works exactly. I think when you bring a part into SolidWorks, you can move it around just like an Inventor and click and place it wherever you want. And then you constrain the parts together with what are called like sketch constraints, but they're assembly constraints. So you can use mates and things to mate surfaces together and different things. But Fusion is what we've kind of been using as our CAD tool, so that's why I'm showing in here. So what Fusion does when you bring a part in, we've got our block, and I'm going to right click on part 2, and I'm going to insert into current design. And it takes a second. So what it does, and I'm just going to hit OK, and so what it does is it brings that part in and it locks it right into the origin points. So now, because I built my little bolt-on piece here, I built that with the origins set up around the mounting pattern, just like the main block. It drops right into that spot, and now we've got our part locked right down in place, right on top of that bolt hole pattern. So now what we want to do, and so as you can see, this, because we use the origin planes, everything's lined up, everything's good. I don't have to move it around anywhere. I don't have to, because you can move the parts, obviously. If I move this part out and then I move this part over, it's no longer locked into place. You can drag it around. There's a command up here to position that says revert, and you can capture the position if you want. But if I revert it, it's going to go right back to the origins points. And in this part in particular, the origin planes, I'll turn the origin planes on in here too. You can see that instead of using that front face, now I'm using this back face. And those planes are going to mount up, and they're going to be, two surfaces. The main part is going back and the front part is coming forward. And then we're centered on this mounting hole pattern here, because I want that to be right in that origin point on that main block. So if I come back to the main block, and like before, I said I had a parameter set up. I used a parameter to control basically the block is being controlled with parameters and through the sketches and stuff, so that I can offset the whole pattern along the horizontal axis whichever way I want. And you can do it both horizontally and vertically if you wanted to, but this is the kind of thing that using those origin points and thinking about those origin points allows you to make a design that, if I go -1, it moves the other way. It allows you to make it so that our holes stay lined up and the part is in a logical place, the origin points are in a logical place, and that's how that works. So I'm going to turn this one off, and then my second part I'm going to insert into current design, and it's basically a similar part, just and it is also constrained, or the origin points are exactly the same way on here. Now this way I can bring in multiple parts, multiple pieces, bolt them together, and I don't have to move them around in my assembly. I don't have to think about it too much. So that shows how those planes interact. That shows how your origins interact with each other when you're thinking about assemblies. Again, like I said, when it's a single part and you're just going to print a part on a 3D printer, center of the part on the bottom of the part is probably, it's going to work just fine. But when you're thinking about assemblies and you're thinking about how you want parts to interact with each other, that's where you're going to want to think about your origins. And it's just a little thing I wanted to talk about, and it's just something I thought I could talk about quickly. But as you want to not only learn the CAD tool, but become a better designer and a better modeler with the assemblies and different things, it's just something to keep in mind, and it's something to start thinking about while you're putting your parts together. At where should my origin go, so you can think about it from the beginning and get an idea of how your part might interact with something else. If it's just interacting with the printer, then yeah, bottom center, probably the best place for it. But if your parts are going to interact with other parts, then maybe not worry about the printer so much, because you can move that around on the bed and you can get that located how you want to on the print bed later on when you print the part. But when you're thinking about how your parts are going to interact with each other, then the origin is needs a little more thought. So that's all I have for this video. I'm going to try to throw out some of these theory videos from time to time. Like I said, they're not necessarily a CAD tutorial, they're just more of a theory discussion. So if you have any ideas or thoughts about origin points, please put them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. If you liked the video, go ahead and like it. If you disliked it, go ahead and give it a thumbs down. But let me know what you think. And if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.